Hello, and welcome to How to Play Death's Pass. So, a couple of days ago, I released a video talking about map plans, what they were, how they should impact your builds, and what you should think about when you're loading into a match. Now, I want to give a concrete example of what that looks like in-game, how it affects your gameplay, how it affects where you position your troops, and how it evolves over the course of a game. So today we've got an example for you of Skaven versus Beastmen, but really this plays the same way of any Missile versus Rush faction on Death's Pass. So first we're taking a look at it from the Beastman perspective, then afterwards we'll go back and take a look at it from the Skaven perspective. So, as the Beastman, this is myself playing, the first thing to think about is which objectives do I want to fight for? Do I want to play for all three? Do I want to play for just for two? Which two, if so, should I fight for? So, I know right off the bat that Objective 3 is usually quite bad for missile factions. Because of all the trees right here, they can't really be supported on Objective 3 by other missiles, so this objective tends to go to the melee faction of the two. If this were reversed, it would be the other objective. You know, same deal without the trees in the way. So missiles are highly ineffective in Objective 3, so I should be able to take that for minimal cost. I can just station an Ungor over there, and it can be my objective the entire game. Which second objective should I go for? Should I go for 2, or should I go for 3? Well, neither one of them gives me an inherent advantage based on map geometry, so it's mostly a matter of, okay, where does my opponent deploy his troops? So, how do I take advantage of this situation? Well, first of all, I put myself in a position between the objectives in these trees right here, where I cannot get shot, first of all, and second of all, I have the power to just sit here and wait, completely safe, while my opponent deploys his troops. He moves up and he starts to take whatever objectives he sees fit, deploying his resources as he feels fit, and then, after he's deployed all of his troops, then I get to decide which objective do I want to take the fight on. I can come out here and pop out and take objective number 2, or I can pop out the other side and take objective number 3, before troops from either one could reinforce the other objective. So, as we see here, my opponent has elected to allocate most of his troops to objective number 2. You see about, 80%. With only 20% down here on objective number 1. So I say, well, I have 75% of my army here in the trees, roughly. So I'm going to take this army and go fight for objective number 1. So that's exactly what you're about to see. So I sit here until I'm satisfied that my opponent has deployed his troops. Then I pop out with my core of very fast mobile units. Then my UI bugs out, so I can't see anything. But I just jump out of the trees. I take a fast, decisive engagement on this objective. I kill the troops he has here, and I take the objective. Takes a couple seconds, a lot of little things going on here, but that's the general map strategy. So now that I've taken the objective, I have a choice to make. So I've taken objective 1, I have a choice. Do I want to remain here? Do I want to sit on objective 1 and just hold it? Or do I want to move up and push this direction? Do I want to go back into trees? Well, I know if I sit here and just sit on this objective, my opponent is going to move his missile units from here and come shoot me. So I don't want to stay here. So the question becomes, do I go back into the trees or do I go forward? Well, if I go forward, I'm taking a fight on his side of the map, right near his spawns, essentially pincering myself between his main force and his reinforcement points. So that's a no-go. That's not something we really want. So I opt to go back into the trees and basically repeat what I did initially, where I just sit in these trees, I wait for him to reallocate his resources, because now he has to come contest objective 1 or 3, but we discussed he doesn't want 3, so he has to take objective 1 because he has to take a second objective. So we basically just go and repeat exactly what we just did. We hide in the trees, he rotates his forces over, my UI bugs out, and then I once again take stock of the situation and say, okay, which force would I rather fight? And in this instance, it's now the one in the center. So I go and take the center. I summon in some reinforcements. I take the fight in the center. I take another quick, decisive engagement right here, while a large portion of his forces are over here, recapping objective 1, unable to support the fight in the middle. Thus, ensuring that every fight I took was at just a numbers advantage, which is largely what this game always comes down to, is just how can I get a numbers advantage and take that optimal engagement. And yeah, from there, I have just destroyed enough of his force that it doesn't really matter anymore. He doesn't have enough forces to actually hold the map, and basically at this point I've won the game. There's a lot of little things I have to do to keep myself in the game, but if we're talking about basic strategy, I have accomplished my goal, I have routed his main force, I am in a very, very good situation, up a ton on value. So, if we are the Skaven in this instance, let's go ahead and restart and look from the Skaven's perspective. So, again, the Skaven can be any other missile unit you have, any missile faction, Cathay, Dwarves, whatever. Go ahead and watch replay. So, how do you defend those two objectives as a missile faction? Because as we discussed, you don't want to take the objective on the side, as the trees really interfere with your ability to support it with your big money-making missile units. So how do you hold the two objectives with a missile faction? Well, the trick is to just not be on the objective very much. If your missiles are on the objective, they're quite vulnerable. They can be easily surrounded, as I'll show you here in a moment once we load in. So, if we're the Skaven, again, any other missile faction also suffice. We have to find a way to make our force here able to hold both of these objectives. So, what you want to do is not actually immediately contest the objectives. The power of missile units is, as this may surprise you, in their missiles. So the way you set up to be advantageous to them is that you don't actually sit on the objective, you sit in a position sort of like this, also between the points, kind of like our opponent did. Only now, instead of just rotating to whichever objective our opponent isn't at, since we have to deploy first, what we do is we deploy missile units in a position where they can threaten both objectives. If you have a Giselle here, or a cannon or whatnot, it has the range to shoot this objective, and the range to shoot this objective. So now I can pressure either one. Which means that if my opponent decides to sit on either of these objectives, if he wants to take them initially, I can shoot at him and exact an attacks. It forces him to either, basically, if he chooses to sit there, he will sooner or later die, and I will retake the objective. If he chooses to back off, then I just waltz a single unit onto the objective and retake. If he chooses to engage, well, then I'm sitting in my happy little box right here, and he has to come into me, and I'm pretty happy with this engagement. This is the ideal engagement for a missile faction, where you're sitting in your box, you're right near your spawn, and your opponent has to come far, far away from their spawn to engage you. And we force them to do this just by having missile units contesting the objectives. Just by having a single unit touching your toe on the objective, you can force your opponent to come into your missile range to contest that objective, and then if they're taking missile fire, they're going to be losing out on that fight, so they have to push further and further forward to come shut down your missiles to ensure they win the fight, which often ends up meaning that they are on your side of the map, which means that you can take a favorable engagement and end up trading up in value heavily enough that you can then just walk over their corpses and take the objectives. So, that is how I approach Death Pass, playing as both Rush and a missile faction. Hope you found this helpful. Hope it gave you a little bit of insight into how Domination this map is played at a high level. If you found it helpful, please, drop a like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Really appreciate the support. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.